In the previous screencast, we created a user model and did some testing. In this screencast, we're going to go ahead and refactor some code in that. We're going to add the ability for our users to log in. And in order to do that, we're going to need to create an Auth Controller. We're going to make a controller extension, and we're going to create the login form. Let's go ahead and get started. Let me talk briefly about this htaccess file. It's .htaccess. It goes into your document root alongside your index.php. This allows your site to not have to have index.php in the URL. For example, in order to access the welcome class, you would do this. What we would prefer is this. So by having this htaccess file and making a small configuration change, we can then have clean URLs without the index.php file in them. So to go ahead and complete that, let's load up the config.php and just blank this field out here. And that's really all we have to do. So now we can go here, dev.test.local, and access anything without index.php. So we're not getting any errors, everything is good. Okay, we should go ahead while we're here and just add some auto load stuff. We're going to be creating a form, so we'll use the form helper. Save that. And let's go ahead and refactor the user model a bit. Previously, we just stored the password into a variable that was in the user model class, and then before save, we would have hashed it. We're going to do that slightly differently this time. We're going to use a PHP ActiveRecord feature called a setter. So we'll just create function set password. And what will happen is when we do in our model or in our controller something like user password equals dog, there is no password attribute. However, dog will be sent to this set password method, and we'll be able to access it using the plain text variable. So what we'll want to do is this hashed password equals this, and then the method to hash a password, plain text. So this fundamentally does what we did in the previous screencast with this code. So we can remove that and have a little bit cleaner code. So let's see. Well, let's go down here and let's rename our login method validate login. And then we'll actually create a function called login. We'll make it a static function and have it so you can pass a user ID. And what it'll do, we'll get access to the CodeIgniter object, and then session set user data, user ID to user ID. So essentially, logging a user in is equivalent to setting their session in a way that as they continue to use the site, we know what user ID they have. So we'll just leave this for now and we'll come back to it shortly. Really quick, I want to update the validate login method. It's not only going to return the user, it's also going to log that user in. So that looks good. Now we're done with this model, we can go ahead and create a controller. This will be our auth controller. and it has a login method. Save it as auth.php. We'll want to go ahead and call the login form. So I need to create it down here. Now, I create a view folder for each controller. So in this case, the controller is auth.php. So here we have views/auth, and then the file is named after the method. So here's function login. We will go ahead and create a new file for our view, and this will be login.php. Now we need to create a form. We don't want to set the value for a password field. And there's our form. So, assuming that we didn't miss anything, we can go to auth/login, and here's our form. Not bad. Okay. When we leave no parameter for form open, it's just going to post to the current URI. So that is perfect for us. We'll just say if post, meaning there's content in the post variable, then the user has submitted the login form. From there, we would go ahead and do something like user validate login, host email. Are we using username? We are using username. Sorry. Host password. If the user is validated, then we'll redirect. Let's just redirect, I guess, to the index page, because we don't have anywhere else right now. Else, we will need to send an error to the view. So let's hold off on that for the moment. So if user redirect. All right. So I'm going to really quick go over here and fix this. I generally always use our email for login, so that would have it. All right. So here is our login form. We can be logged in right now. So let's go ahead here. And our test user and test pass account. Undefined index username, line 10. I didn't reload the form. There we go. User test pass. Undivided property session. Should have thought to auto load that. Libraries session. Now, really quick, while we're adding the session library, let's go over this the session configuration, the config.php. First of all, we need to enter an encryption key. You will usually want to enter something better than this, but I'm just going to jam some keys in there. I will tell you right now, I do not like to use database for sessions. You ever get a situation where you're writing an app, you load a page and you hit reload real quick before it's done loading, etc., and then suddenly you're logged out? That happens to your users too, and that's because the database didn't have time to be updated. While the site was processing and loading, the session information wasn't updated, and now your cookie in your user's browser and then the session data in the database table no longer match. The user gets logged out. So use normal PHP temp files, which is what is used if you indicate the session used database is false. I think this is a better way to handle it. That's my opinion. So now we have session. We should be able to log in just fine. Test user, test pass, auto load, URL, we reload, and here we are. It's saying not logged in because that's what our welcome controller says. So here we are. Test user, test pass, log in. Alright, we're at the welcome view. Now, as you remember, if the information is not correct, as it's not right now, it's just not doing anything. If user is correct, it redirects. If not, it doesn't do anything. So what we'll do is else data error, or let's just do data message. Usually I have a whole subsystem to do flash messages. I'll go over that another time. Let's initialize that array. Then we will send it here. So what's happening is, if there's not a user, we're setting the value of the message index of the data array to the error message. We're then passing that data array to the view. So let's go ahead and look at the view. What we'll do is set message, then message. Otherwise, output nothing. So here's this login. User password combination that you have entered is invalid. If we enter valid information, we get taken to the welcome view. So that works. What you'll notice also is that since we have the user model set up in this way, when we're validating their login, they're also actually being logged in. In order to really do anything with that, we're going to want to extend the controller. Currently, Auth uses CI controller, and that's fine. If we go to core, we'll add a new file. Class myController extends CI controller. And then we'll add a method variable, user equals false. Alright, this is enough to do the job. To name it correctly, otherwise it won't be loaded. We can go to auth.php and change class auth is extending from CI controller to myController. So what's happening is the CI controller functionality is being automatically brought into the myController class because it's an extension of that controller. Auth has the functionality of the CI controller as well as the functionality that we add into myController. So we'll be able to add some really nice stuff to bring our application together. For now, let's go ahead and convert welcome as well. And then just reload the page here to make sure we don't get any errors, and we don't. Now what we'll want to do is when this class comes into existence, this is the constructor method. When this class comes into existence, this method will be run. When we extend a class like CI controller, we want to always make sure that the first thing we do, well, it's usually the first thing you do, sometimes there are extenuating circumstances, is call the parent class's constructor. So we'll call CI controller because the CI controller class does stuff in its constructor, and if we simply omit this, then our controller will be the same as the CI controller, except we will have overridden the the CI controller's constructor, meaning that all of the code in the CI controllers will not be run. It'll just be completely ignored. So we'll run that so that our controller is essentially identical to CI controller with our added functionality. So we'll just say if this, actually let's do this with the ternary operator. This user equals so by calling this session user data user ID, we're either going to get back a user ID because we set one, or we're going to get back false because we didn't. So if we do, what we'll do is user find this session user data user ID, and we'll get back that user object, or we'll just return false again. So this user will be equal to false. Now, this user variable will be populated on every load, assuming that the user ID session variable has been set. Since we've already logged in once, our session variable is set. Let's go ahead and look at the welcome index here. So what we'll do is we'll say if this user, and I can say this user because this welcome class is an extension of my controller. So it has the user variable from the myController class. If this user, then die the user, this username is logged in. Else die nobody is logged in. So let's go over here. We'll type test user and test pass and log in. The user test user is logged in. We can just go here without posting, and we're still logged in. Really quick, in the Auth Controller function logout, it's probably best that we create a logout method in the user model because there may be some things that we want to add to that logout method later, and the user model is really the right place to put that kind of logic. So public static function logout CI get instance CI sess destroy. This will session. This will destroy the session. So no session, no user data, no user ID, no loading of this user. So this user will return false. So let's go ahead and run the logout. Auth/logout. So we are logged out. I didn't have it redirect. User logout, redirect, and we'll just have redirect to welcome. Nobody is logged in. So to log in again, test user, test. And that's basically the basics of logging in a user and then having access to the user object. You will have access to the user object not only in your controllers, but also in your views. So we could very easily put this logic into a view. It can be used to determine whether or not you display a toolbar that they get when they're logged in, that they do not get when they're not logged in, etc. Or you can add code that says if this user is not logged in, then force them to log in. You could do that by, for example, let's create a new controller really fast. Function, class dashboard extends my controller. Really quick, a note. You want to get rid of all these closed PHP tags in your object-oriented PHP. Here's why. See how there's this white space here after the closed PHP tag? Well, your class is getting defined in this file. You want your class to be defined. You don't want to send any output to the browser, because if output to the browser, you're no longer able to send headers, which means you can't set cookie information, you can't set session information since that uses cookies. So it basically breaks your app. So in order to not have to make sure that there's absolutely no white space, look, you can't even tell if there's a space after that greater than sign. But now we know there's not, and now we don't have to worry about it. It's done. You don't have to have closing PHP tags. So just don't use them. You will save yourself frustrations when you get a white screen and you can't explain why you're getting it, and then you reconstruct your controller and it suddenly works. It's not fun. So here, function index dashboard index. All right, we'll name it dashboard.php, and this is where we will send people once they log in. Test user, test pass, welcome to the dashboard index. We don't want people to be on the dashboard if they're not logged in. But here we are. We're not logged in, and we're at the dashboard. How can we avoid that? Again, we'll use the constructor, call parent construct. If you don't call parent construct, you know what doesn't happen. This user won't get set at all because this is the parent constructor method. If not this user, if this user isn't logged in, redirect to auth login. So we're going to hit reload. Well, we didn't have a valid login, but now that we do, we're allowed in again. I'll change one more thing, and that's the routes. Let's go ahead and do route login is equal to auth/login, and route logout is equal to auth/logout. And we can make a few changes. We'll just kill the auth altogether and forget it's even there. All right, that's it. There's only one place where we were redirecting to the logout. So now we can do logout. Now we can do login. And there it goes. All right, we're a little over 20 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and stop this screencast here. There are more efficient ways to do this, better ways to do this. Matthew Machuga has created a little bit of code that adds before and after filters to your CodeIgniter controller. It's very useful functionality. We will be getting to that. And I wanted to cover associations, but that will have to be reserved for a future screencast. This basically gives us a solid foundation. Now we can move forward and kind of start adding some more interesting and more complex functionality. Thanks for watching. I'm looking forward to creating the next screencast in this series.